On July 16, 1945, in a quiet patch of New Mexico desert, humanity unleashed the power of the sun. The world held its breath as a flash of light, brighter than anything ever seen on Earth, signaled the dawn of a terrifying new age. We've all heard the official story. It was a triumph of science, a feat of engineering that helped bring the world's most destructive war to an end. But that's only part of the story. The truth is far stranger, more complex, and was buried under layers of secrecy. The story we think we know was a carefully constructed facade, hiding a much messier reality. While the world stared at the mushroom cloud, a different kind of war was being fought in the shadows of Los Alamos. A war of spies, cover-ups, and internal lies that truly defined the world's most secret project. We're told the Manhattan Project was built to defeat a foreign enemy. But what if its biggest secrets weren't about the bomb itself, but about who it was really aimed at, and who was listening in from the very beginning? This wasn't just a race against the Nazis. It was a race against allies, a race against time, and in many ways, a race against the truth itself. And some of those secrets, buried for decades, are still changing what we thought we knew about the birth of the atomic age. The secret war within. From the very beginning, the Manhattan Project was designed to be the most secure operation in history. Under the command of General Leslie Groves, secrecy was the absolute cornerstone of everything. Research sites like Los Alamos in New Mexico, Oak Ridge in Tennessee, and Hanford in Washington were built in remote locations and literally erased from public maps. Inside these secret cities, an even deeper layer of secrecy was enforced: compartmentalization. This was Groves's core security principle. Information was broken down into thousands of tightly controlled boxes. Each scientist or engineer only knew what was absolutely essential for their specific job, and nothing more. A physicist designing a detonator lens wouldn't know how the uranium was being enriched. The thousands of workers at the massive Oak Ridge facilities had no idea they were building a bomb. Many were told they were making a new type of rayon. Most people didn't even know the names of their coworkers in other departments. Everyone signed pledges of silence and posters warning, "What you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, when you leave here, let it stay here," were plastered everywhere. Mail was read, phone calls were monitored, and the FBI kept a close watch on anyone who seemed even a little bit suspicious. It was designed to be an information fortress, but it wasn't leak-proof. While General Groves was busy building walls to keep secrets in, a few key people were already on the inside, working to smuggle them out. The most damaging of them all was a quiet, brilliant German-born physicist named Klaus Fuchs. Fuchs was a committed communist who had fled Nazi Germany. He eventually made his way to Great Britain, earned his PhD, and was recruited into the British atomic bomb project. Driven by a deep-seated fear that a Western monopoly on atomic weapons would be a danger to the world, Fuchs made a fateful choice. In 1941, he walked into the Soviet embassy and offered to become a spy. His conviction was absolute. He wasn't in it for the money. He simply wanted to ensure Soviet scientists got the information, believing he wasn't committing treason, but restoring a necessary balance of power. When a team of British scientists was sent to the U.S. in 1943 to join the Manhattan Project, Fuchs was with them. He sailed through the FBI background checks and was given top-level security clearance. He was sent directly to the heart of the project, the Theoretical Physics Division at Los Alamos, where he worked on the most sensitive secrets of the bomb's design. Working under giants like Hans Bethe, Fuchs made critical contributions to the plutonium implosion bomb, and everything he learned, he passed to his Soviet handlers. His main contact in the U.S. was a courier named Harry Gold. Fuchs would give Gold incredibly detailed documents, including the complete plans for the Fat Man bomb. His work was so significant that it's now credited with saving the Soviet atomic program at least a full year of development. But Fuchs wasn't alone. There was another high-level spy inside Los Alamos, whose identity remained a secret for nearly 50 years. Theodore Hall. Hall was a prodigy from Harvard who, at just 19 years old, was one of the youngest physicists on the project. Like Fuchs, Hall was driven by ideology. He was afraid that a post-war America with a nuclear monopoly would become a global threat. Believing he was acting to save the world, Hall decided to share atomic secrets with the Soviet Union. In 1944, he and his college roommate made contact with a Soviet agent in New York. Hall handed over a detailed report on the VE implosion bomb and a list of key scientists at Los Alamos. And the network didn't stop there. A third source, David Greenglass, was an Army machinist who built the precision molds for the implosion device's lenses. Greenglass was recruited by his brother-in-law, Julius Rosenberg, and provided sketches and descriptions of the lens assembly. Together, the information from Fuchs, Hall, and Greenglass gave the Soviets a breathtakingly complete picture of the American atomic effort. They had the high-level theory, the detailed engineering plans, and the crucial manufacturing secrets. And for years, all of this was happening right under the nose of General Groves' vaunted security system. So, how did they get away with it for so long? The answer lies in another secret, a counterintelligence operation so sensitive that its existence was hidden from the public and, for a time, even from the highest levels of government. It was codenamed the Venona Project. Starting in 1943, the U.S. Army began intercepting coded messages between Soviet offices and Moscow. These codes were supposed to be unbreakable, but because the Soviets made a critical error and reused some of their codes, American cryptanalysts slowly began to crack them. In late 1946, they made their first major breakthrough, reading a message that contained a list of top Manhattan Project scientists. Over the next few years, the Venona decrypts revealed a devastating picture of widespread Soviet espionage. They confirmed the guilt of Klaus Fuchs, which led to his arrest in 1950. They identified Theodore Hall and confirmed Julius Rosenberg's spy ring. But the Venona Project was considered too valuable to risk revealing in court. This meant that while the government had proof, they couldn't always use it. Fuchs confessed when he was confronted. The Rosenbergs were convicted and executed, largely because David Greenglass testified against them. But Theodore Hall, despite being interrogated by the FBI, was never prosecuted. The evidence was simply too secret to use. Hall went on to have a distinguished career as a biophysicist, and his life as an atomic spy remained a secret until the Venona files were finally declassified in 1995. In a great twist of irony, the secret project created to catch the spies had to remain a secret itself, which allowed some of them to simply walk away. Scientific cover-ups and internal lies, the spying that riddled the Manhattan Project was a secret kept from the American public. But there was another kind of secret, the ones kept within the project itself. These were the internal lies, the scientific gambles, and the moral compromises hidden even from the people building the bomb. The biggest technical secret centered on the plutonium bomb. Early on, scientists realized that the plutonium being made in their reactors was far more unstable than they'd expected. It was contaminated with an isotope, plutonium-240, that could fission spontaneously. This meant that a simple gun-type bomb wouldn't work. The plutonium would detonate too early in a disappointing fizzle instead of a massive explosion. This was a potential disaster. The entire Hanford facility, a billion-dollar complex, was being built to produce a material that was useless for the simple design they had planned. This crisis was a closely guarded secret, known only to a handful of top scientists. To solve it, J. Robert Oppenheimer bet the project's future on a radical and totally unproven idea: implosion. The concept was to surround a sphere of plutonium with perfectly shaped explosive lenses. When detonated, these lenses would create a symmetrical shockwave, crushing the plutonium core into a critical mass in a fraction of a microsecond, fast enough to trigger a full-scale nuclear explosion. The physics and engineering were mind-boggling. One scientist described it as trying to crush a beer can into a perfect, tiny ball without it wrinkling. The timing had to be synchronized to within millionths of a second. For over a year, the implosion program was hit with constant failures. The fact that it might not work at all was a secret kept under the tightest of wraps. General Groves and Oppenheimer put on a confident face while, behind the scenes, the project's best minds worked frantically. The successful Trinity test wasn't just the first atomic detonation. It was the desperate, last-minute proof that their secret, high-stakes gamble had paid off. While that secret was about physics, other secrets were about morality. The project's leaders were terrified of the unknown effects of these new radioactive elements on the human body. To protect their workers, they needed data, and they decided the only way to get it was through human experiments. Between 1945 and 1947, in a series of top-secret medical studies, 18 people were injected with plutonium and others with uranium, all without their fully informed consent. The subjects were often poor hospital patients who were believed to have terminal illnesses. The doctors rationalized that since they likely didn't have long to live, they wouldn't suffer the long-term effects of radiation, like cancer. The first subject, a car accident victim named Eb Cade, was injected with plutonium at Oak Ridge on April 10, 1945. Doctors just told him it was a cocktail for his condition. His samples were then collected and analyzed to see how his body processed the material, establishing a baseline to protect workers who might be accidentally exposed. It was a staggering ethical breach, a secret hidden from the public, from Congress, and from almost everyone working on the project for decades. It was all justified in the name of national security and worker safety. Chilling example of how the project's culture of total secrecy could override basic human ethics. This pattern of deception went all the way to the top. After the bombs fell on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, reports began to trickle out of Japan about a horrifying new illness. People who survived the blast were dying days or weeks later from an invisible sickness. This was, of course, radiation poisoning. General Leslie Groves knew this. His own medical experts had warned him about radioactive fallout months earlier. Yet in public, General Groves flat out lied. At a press conference, he dismissed reports of radiation sickness as propaganda. When asked by Congress if there was any radioactive residue left in the Japanese cities, he gave a one-word answer: none. He insisted that the only harm from radiation happened at the exact moment of the blast, what he called instantaneous damage. It was a calculated lie, told to manage public opinion and downplay the horrific, lingering effects of the weapons he had built. Some scientists later contradicted Groves, but the project's top leadership, including Oppenheimer, remained publicly silent. The official story was that the atomic bomb was just a bigger bomb. The secret, now horrifyingly clear, was that it was a fundamentally different kind of weapon, one that kept on killing long after the mushroom cloud had faded. The unseen consequences. The secrets of the Manhattan Project didn't end with the war. In fact, their deadliest consequences were just beginning. The web of spying, the internal cover-ups, and the culture of secrecy didn't just create a bomb. They created the blueprint for the post-war world and ignited the conflict that would define the next 50 years, the Cold War. The most immediate consequence was the dramatic acceleration of the Soviet atomic program. American intelligence had assumed the USSR wouldn't be able to build a bomb until the mid-1950s. The idea that America would have a nuclear monopoly for years was the bedrock of its post-war foreign policy, giving its leaders a huge sense of security. But they were living in a fantasy. Thanks to the secrets supplied by Klaus Fuchs, Theodore Hall, and others, Soviet scientists got to skip years of difficult research. They knew which uranium enrichment methods worked best. They had the incredibly complex design for the implosion device, which saved them from the same near failure that had almost crippled the American effort. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated its first atomic bomb. To the shock of American intelligence, the bomb was a virtual replica of the Fat Man plutonium device. The American nuclear monopoly, which was supposed to last a decade, had evaporated in just 4 years. The shockwave from that explosion shattered the globe. The revelation that the Soviets had the bomb and that they'd gotten it through a catastrophic security failure triggered a new and terrifying chapter in history: the nuclear arms race. The United States responded by fast-tracking the hydrogen bomb. The Soviets raced to build their own. For the next 40 years, the world lived under the shadow of mutually assured destruction, a fragile peace held together by the secrets stolen from Los Alamos. The spies who believed they were creating a balance of power had instead kick-started a terrifying and seemingly endless spiral of escalation. But the legacy of these secrets goes far beyond the arms race. In many ways, the methods used to manage the project became the blueprint for the modern American national security state. Think about the structure General Groves created: extreme compartmentalization, where information is power and is shared only on a need-to-know basis. A system of vast, secret budgets, hidden from public and even most congressional oversight. The use of surveillance to monitor its own citizens in the name of security. The creation of a classified world, with its own rules and its own truth, operating outside the democratic process. This model of secrecy didn't just survive after the war. It grew. It was adopted and expanded by new intelligence agencies like the CIA. The Manhattan Project had proven that a democratic government could run a vast, clandestine empire, all justified by an existential threat. The Cold War provided that threat for 50 years, and the war on terror would follow. The idea that there's a world of secrets the public can't be trusted with, guarded by a government apparatus that operates in the shadows, is perhaps the project's most enduring legacy. It not only split the atom, it fundamentally split the relationship between the government and its citizens. The Manhattan Project is usually remembered as a heroic story of science winning a war. But the real story is a maze of secrets. Secrets of betrayal, as spies funneled the keys to atomic power to a rival. Secrets of scientific desperation, like the near-catastrophic failure of the implosion bomb. And the dark, moral secrets of human experimentation and the deliberate lies told to cover up radiation's deadly effects. Every single one of those secrets left a permanent mark on our world. The espionage plunged us into a nuclear arms race that held humanity hostage for generations. The culture of secrecy created a model for a state within a state, an apparatus of control that remains a source of immense power and controversy. The project that was meant to deliver ultimate security instead gave us an age of permanent anxiety. If you want to see more investigations into the hidden parts of our history, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. It's the best way to support our work as we uncover the stories that have been left in the shadows. Maybe the biggest secret of the Manhattan Project is this: it proved that humanity could create a power capable of ending civilization. But it also created a system of secrecy so profound that we might never know the full price we paid to unleash it. We built our modern world on a mountain of classified documents, and we're still living in the fallout today.